Hello everybody and welcome to Dork Tales. I'm Kelly, your game master here, and I'm very excited to bring you to our brilliant ruin, our brilliant review, because we were lucky enough to be sponsored by Studio Hermitage for a 3-session actual play, playing the starter adventure from this new game that is on Kickstarter right now. Afterwards, we decided to get together and talk about the game and do a little review so that you'd know what to expect out of this exciting new game, and we would talk about our experience with it. Now, before we begin, just a little disclaimer. Our actual play was sponsored. This review is not. So we're going to give you our honest opinions, but that existing relationship is there. So I just wanted to be completely fair and open with you that we do have a relationship with Studio Hermitage, and we'd love for it to continue with future actual plays. But with that in mind, once again, I was the Game Master Kelly. I use he and him, and I am the host over here at Dork Tales. If you're not already following us, please do. And you can find us on Twitch, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Let's go around a circle, say who we are, and then let's jump into the review, starting with Jen.
Hey, I'm Jen, and I use she and her. And for this, I played Lady Moira Astis Willow. A lot of fun to play. And you can usually find me here on Dork Tales or on Paradox Mage the Ascension podcast.
Fantastic. Next to you, we have Kal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kal. I use he, him pronouns. I've been, I think over a year. Been on Dork Tales over a year now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Wow, time flies. And you can find me doing the Too Much Energon podcast. If you don't know what that's about, then it's probably not for you. Or the Lasercomb podcast, where I review random episodes throughout time of random TV shows. And I'm excited to jump into this with all y'all.
Fantastic. Down beneath you, we have Robin.
Hello, I'm Robin. I use she, her pronouns, and you can usually find me here on Dork Tales doing so many games. And when I'm not doing games and on Dork Tales, sometimes I play video games, like I've been working through very slowly Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines over on my own Twitch channel, Second Gen Gamer. But I'm usually here because it's a lot more fun playing with friends and rolling click-clack dice because it's addicting. And I played LJ Bartlett, the Rivet and Bellows Union True Folk.
And last but definitely not least, Michael.
Hi everyone, it's me, Michael, going with he, him pronouns, and you can usually find me here on Dork Tales, and if I'm not on the Dork Tales stream, I'm probably made the artwork for the Dork Tales stream, because I do a bunch of graphic design stuff in the real world and in the fantasy world with all my friends, and in this game, I got to play Faustus Renaud, the best mustache ever. Yeah. I mean, that really explains everything.
Rest in peace. Rest in pomade.
Yeah. It's so sad. It doesn't stick anymore.
It was basically character death.
It was character death. We only lost one character, and it was the mustache.
Yeah.
All right. So before we begin, if you're wondering what is Our Brilliant Ruin, it is a new game by Studio Hermitage. It is a game that is set in a slightly parallel world to Earth. Not Earth, but similar enough to our own world in the Gilded Age. So roughly into the Edwardian era to like the Great Gatsby era. There are vehicles, there are debutante balls, there is courtly intrigue and aristocratic mystique, there are labor revolts. It's that chunk of history where a lot of social change happens and there's a lot of mobility and a lot of backbiting and potential for violence and excitement. It is also a dystopian game where we are in a world where the light of a distant star has irradiated this world and has brought it to ruin. This ruinous light has warped metal, has warped flesh and minds, and is slowly destroying this world. It's killed much of the world's infrastructure and has reduced humanity to a small pocket in a place called the Dramark. If you have ever played a game like Frostpunk or anything like that, it's very similar. Humanity is kind of comprised into this one tiny livable space, and they're doing their best to live out the end of days with a little bit of style. It is a post-law and order society as well, where law is designed, where law has fallen to the masses. So there really aren't any like police. It is by mob rule much of the time, and yet the aristocracy still manages to hold sway due to their vast wealth because humanity is still humanity. It is a game that is designed by Justin Achille of Vampire the Masquerade fame. So if you are a big fan of the World of Darkness, it has many of the touchstones that you have seen in his work in the past. It's dark, it's exciting, it's got a lot of that social backbiting that you would expect from somebody who worked on Vampire that long. And it is a really cool setting. So what we're going to do is we're going to first off talk about the setting, then we're going to go into things like stats, mechanics of the actual gameplay, and then places like where this game fits in the greater context of the tabletop role-playing game landscape as a whole, and some issues and advice that we have for running your own game. So let's go ahead and start with the setting. How did you guys feel about this setting, this pre-apocalyptic or mid-apocalyptic setting kind of in the Downton Abbey? And I keep bringing up Great Gatsby because I feel like every character wants to be Leonardo DiCaprio with the glass.
But also like Pride and Prejudice and zombies.
True.
Also that vibe.
So part of that setting, in addition to everything Kelly said, if anyone's familiar with Dishonored,
yes,
or Bloodborne, there's literally the ruin, which is the disease, and it can affect people and animals. So you have ruined, like you have werewolves and vampires.
Yeah,
which are people
you can't have a World of Darkness created or like adjacent property without vampires.
But
Pretty
like
sure they said that in a
mutants,
social media post.
Monsters, probably monsters. But there's also an interesting Tesla punk aspect in the psilokinetic, like lost tech.
Mm-hmm.
So
what is
it's not
psilokinetics?
only.
I didn't go over those. So do you want to explain those?
Yeah, psilokinetics. So even though it's kind of Great Gatsby, this is why it kind of has that Tesla punk Fallout feel to the setting. Any of the Fallout games where the most advanced tech has been lost to time, and they're available in everything was very privatized near the end. And psilokinetics, if I'm saying that word right,
I believe so.
I hope I am.
I think you
are. They're kind of like, if you've ever played the board game Scythe or played any Fallout, they're kind of like buildings or giant machines or factories with super tech that has been lost to time. So either mutants or traps or gangs.
Yeah, we don't know how to make it, but we know how to run it, and we hope that it keeps running.
And we hope that it keeps running, or maybe raid them. Like, hey, there's this factory. It keeps making cheese. It's really good.
Cheese. Really?
Oh, it's not good cheese?
It's just Kraft Singles.
So like Kraft Single, dang you. We were on the same wavelength there. Yeah, it's Kraft Singles, but it's so much that we'll never starve if all we want to eat is Kraft Singles. A little cooler than that. I imagine.
If we're 8 years old, we're good forever.
And the things you could, well, there you go. Yeah. And there you go. Speaking of Fallout, it's just 8-year-olds that run that one, but they're harsh. They have guns that shoot Kraft Singles at you. So, but
Also,
that's a cool part because it adds kind of a let's go to the temple aspect to the game, or let's go. Why do these raiders have like plasma rifles aspect to the game where super tech can come in? And I think that lends well to the Tesla punk and steampunk feel of the game. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
I was gonna say to go with the
cheese
vibe.
raiders.
Cheese raiders.
Their artwork that they have, like in their document previews that we've gotten that have had artwork, it's like they do such a good setup for this world that you get this clear vibe going in where you're like, I don't even know. Like when Kelly was asking around who wanted to be part of this, I was like, sounds kind of cool. And then saw some like documents and it was like, holy shit, I want to be in this. I can get this vibe immediately, and I want this vibe. It is a very unique.
It's wild.
It's Wild West, but Victorian and fancy and debutante and good with guns, plasma rifles.
There could be plasma rifles. What about Mike and Jen? What do you have to think about? What do you have to say about the setting? Is what spoke to you about it? What about it is interesting or grabbed you?
I kind of enjoyed looking at all the artwork because it inspired a lot of ideas, and considering I had to do some of our framework, part of the background image I made up was inside of the vehicle that we were using, and every time I kept researching how to make it more appropriate, I kept saying, this graphic really needs more tassels. I need tassels everywhere. And it really
that
kind
explains
of
the filigree.
yeah, it really spoke to the vibe and the entire setting where you're like, this vehicle needs more tassels inside.
And I think, Mike, you touch on something very important there. This is very much a vibes game. More than anything else, this is a game where you are going to get the vibes thrown directly at you. It is moody and atmospheric, and it's the type of game where it almost has like a smell to it when you play it, like a nostalgic smell, and you get the sense of place as soon as you start it up. And it's interesting because not all games can do that. Some do it very well. Games like Blades in the Dark, you get an immediate sense of what you're playing. If you are playing Pathfinder, for example, you get a great sense of like all of the things your character can do, the World of Darkness games, of course, and so on. But especially some more modern games like City of Mist or Blades in the Dark or Bands of Blades, you have that like that mood that immediately jumps out at you from the moment you start your character. And this definitely has that. So if you're looking for something that is a bit off the beaten track, give this a look. Jen, is there anything about the setting that you found particularly enticing or interesting?
I honestly think Kal and Robin and Michael, but specifically Kal and Robin, it really hit it on the head. Vibes are great. Art, what drew me in.
God, the art, they must have spent all of their money on art because it's so impressive compared to like a lot of games that are on the Kickstarter circuit these days. No offense to them, they're great games, but they can't struggle with this art. This art immediately is gripping. Now, but you're not here for art. You're here to hear about what type of game this is. So Our Brilliant Ruin kind of functions in the same way. Earlier I mentioned Blades in the Dark, or some games from the Apocalypse World engine, or Powered by the Apocalypse. These type of games are ones that are... There are a couple of ways to look at it, but I would say they are storytelling games first, and they're tabletop games second in many ways. Meaning that they are not driven by dice so much as fiction. The dice are reactive to what the characters are saying. So rather than, say, like in Dungeons and Dragons, you would say, I make a perception roll to see what I find. With this, you would say, oh, I look around the room, I check under these things. And then the game master would assign what type of stats might be helpful for this role. You would be looking at, say, maybe you're being observant would be more helpful, but maybe being more dedicated would be more helpful to pour through everything. Jen?
I would slightly disagree with that because some of
really?
some of the way that this works is that the players go, I would like to look around the space, I would like to do this, and then they negotiate and potentially argue for their option rather than the storyteller or game master assigning something like you would in a World of Darkness game. That's one of the troubles we ran into.
That is true. It is a different type of game than what we usually run. So if you are new to Dork Tales, we run a lot of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. We run a lot of World of Darkness. We run things by Free League, like the Alien role-playing game, and things that are a little, I would say they're game master forward games for the most part, where the game master does lead more often. And this game,
you didn't roll a single dice, right? You don't roll dice
in this game. If you're a game master, you don't roll. Okay. So, and if you're wondering immediately and you're like, well, how does this work? If you're a monster, the way that it works is in D&D, of course, a monster rolls to hit you and then rolls for damage. In this game, the monster has, say, a set damage rating. Players have a set health rating that does not change throughout the game. Unless it goes down. But a character will never have more than a certain number of hit boxes on them, or health levels. And a monster may do, say that they have 5 health boxes on a healthy character. There may be a monster that does 5 health levels of damage. And it, say, Mike is playing a character, and a mutant with a chainsaw arm takes a swipe at you. And I say that it's taking a swipe at you, and then you can choose if the monster's attack is able to be absorbed. A chainsaw arm, probably not. A punch, yes. Or dodged. Then you would roll to see how many of my 5 points of damage you negate. And that is a really interesting system. And I've seen it a lot in games like Monster of the Week, which is a fantastic game if you haven't checked it out, because there is always a threat then when you are dealing with monsters in close combat. Because unless you roll somehow miraculously, in this system, rolling 5 brills or 5 sixes on your dice is damn near impossible. It is not something this game is going to give out a lot. 3, yes. 5, probably not. So if you're going up against something that can do that much damage to you, you are not coming away without scars. It is like fighting a grizzly bear. And I like that level of realism that goes into some games like this, because we've all played Dungeons and Dragons where a barbarian is on a dragon and is like 500 feet above the ground and goes, well, if I rage and I jump off this, the max damage I can take is 200 damage and I have 201 hit points, so I will survive.
But if you're raging, you'll take that by half because it's bludgeoning
Exactly.
damage.
Well, we're not getting into that, but yeah. So, but we've all seen those stories with the guy who suplexed the dragon out of the sky.
Yes, this is very much like a cool. It's like magical realism. It's definitely in more of that Blades in the Dark, World of Darkness vibe, where it's like, yeah, there's that level of realism where you feel like you can die very fast, but also there is that cool kind of supernaturally, you're still kind of a badass depending on how you stat yourself in certain things you are very good at, but then there's also things that you are very not good at and are not accustomed.
Most things you're going to be bad at.
Yes,
most things you're gonna be, I mean, like, think about John Wick.
Like in life. Yeah, exactly.
Would you think John Wick would do well at like a social gala? Man doesn't speak.
No, just
he's a man of very particular set of skills,
and he's back. But like, you look at somebody like Miss Marple, right? Is Miss Marple gonna be able to like take fools out with books and pencils? I would assume not, but I haven't seen much Miss Marple, so maybe. But like, so every character has their own niche, right? Much like real people. You may have some people who are very bronze or silver medal at everything, and then you may have some hyper-focused people. Now, this game is a bit interesting because its characters don't follow a normal, what we would expect in a role-playing game in terms of, you know, what they have, their stats, their classes, and things like that. Well, this actually is the only game I've seen in a while where class is an actual function of the character, because this game relies on your character being a member of one of 3 social classes. And you gain a lot of things based on that. First of all, many of our characters were from the aristocracy. The aristocracy get a bunch of benefits, usually related to what they have or what they can do socially.
Okay. But yeah, 2 of us we'll get into who played what. But yeah, 2 of us were fancy rich lads.
Yep, 2 of you were fancy rich lads.
2 of us were the working class.
And the working class are the true folk. They are the blue collar workers. They are the ones who are good at stuff. The game is really interesting because it divides things down by what type of fantasy you want to play. And I've never seen it stated before, but that's actually, seeing their write-up has kind of changed the way I look at game creation in some ways, where I look at like, what is the fantasy you're looking to play in this is such an interesting, very kind of corporate way of breaking it down, but it's a very interesting bit of game theory right there. So aristocracy, of course, being the fantasy of being like connected and powerful and wealthy and stylish, right? It's the cool kid one. The true folk is you're competent. You're good at what you do. You know, you are excellent at what you are doing for the world, whether you are a doctor, a singer, or a mechanic. Okay, now we had 2 of those in the game. So basically, you 2 on the top were aristocrats. As you can see, your logos are still there. And you 2 on the bottom were members of the true folk in different guilds. And then finally, there's a 3rd class called the Unbonded. They are the outsiders. They are the rebellion. They are the ones that are outside of the norm and either are criminals, settlers, even. Like, they don't have to be doing anything illegal or immoral, but they just have to be doing something different than everyone else.
They're outsiders.
They're the anarchists a little bit. They don't conform with societal norms and they don't want to fit into that. And because they don't fit into what society has established, they become the outsiders. And
like Kelly said, though, they don't have to be like cannibal raiders.
Literally just be
they're
settlers.
The people
homesteaders.
People that live in the woods.
Now, that said, socially, this game is set in an era where the world's ending and there is no police oversight and it's rule of mob more than law. So a lot of societal customs that we would have seen in the 1920s are just thrown up in the air. So I just want to say real quick that just because the unbonded exist outside of society, that doesn't mean that they're like an allegory for anything that we would see in particularly in the pre-modern age of marginalized people. Those people are all folded already in. Like, the world's ending, people have stopped caring as much about sexism, racism, homophobia, anything like that. They are just trying to survive. So a lot of those things are not in the game, which is great in a historical setting to not have to confront those or not have to tiptoe around them if you are not comfortable having those in your game. You don't have to have them in this game.
And I think it's great that they've done this setting where it's like, yeah, this is kind of like the world, but also it's a made-up world. So we don't have to have those society issues that we have on our current Earth that we live in.
Yeah.
This doesn't necessarily have to be something you deal with if you don't want to do it, but it's not built into the game. There's not underlying biases built in with the classes and things like that. So
I think they're
it's really
saying,
great.
I think they're saying something important by the
By
only actual like struggle is the classist divide, which we'll get into.
We'll get
in
into
a bit.
that.
That's our next section. Yeah,
It
But,
felt
I
like
like
we
that.
were survivors on a life raft after the Titanic sunk, and we've kind of mixed all of the different individuals together, and now we all have to learn to live together or not.
Well, and
that's a great analogy.
It's a really
Yeah,
great
that
one.
is
The survivors from the Titanic.
the survivors from the Titanic. It's great.
I once had a beer with author Stephen Erickson of Gardens of the Moon fame, and he outlined the fantasy approach to things like sexism in a really interesting way, which is in a world where everyone can throw a fireball, things are much more balanced than they are in real life. And the same in this, where everybody has access to psilokinetics or great wealth, wherever there are innate advantages that are not determinate by any type of exterior non-class related line, things get a lot more even. That life raft metaphor is perfect though.
The life raft, or like the resource holding, like games like board games like Settlers of Catan. If it doesn't matter if you're lucky and you're near a resource that keeps rolling and you collect cards, you're gonna win because you have the most cards. It's not because of who you are as a person, it is the resources that you have available near you at the time. And I think that is a very unique
that's a good point.
concept.
When the world exploded, it depends, and that's depends if you're next to a sheep farm. I keep telling Robin, share your damn sheep.
No, my sheep, give me more wood.
Well, but here's the thing about that, and the game actually says this a number of times, and in the documentation, as you're going through, you're like, okay, but what stops people from just like going over to that aristocrat's house, killing them, and taking the house? And it's like, nothing. So the aristocrat needs to be aware of that. Kind of keeps civility, you know? And
It's a social contract.
It's the social contract, yeah. And it's really interesting. So if you like that type of tension in your games, awesome. So after that, every character, after they pick their class, every character has an epigram, a statement that kind of expresses their worldview, that kind of like is a guiding concept. So in a lot of games, this would be like, recovering alcoholic detective would be like your character concept. In this, you would pick basically a sentence, similar to, say, in D&D 5e, personality traits, flaws, bonds, things like that. Some epigrams to give you context that they provide are, the respect that is only bought by gold is not worth much. I have one aim, the grotesque. If I am not grotesque, I am nothing. The secret to life is to enjoy the pleasure of being terribly, terribly deceived. So 3 epigrams to kind of guide. So then, unlike most games, when you're looking at your characters, what makes them as a person, you would look at their attributes, or in D&D, your ability scores. Those would be things like your strength, your dexterity, your constitution, your intelligence, your wisdom, your charisma, your composure, your resolve, things like that. As you are looking at that in normal games, you're getting a sense of who somebody is based on the rough components of what comprises them as a being. How strong are they? How smart are they? Our Brilliant Rune doesn't have that. And this is where the game gets, for me, very interesting, but also a little hard to grasp in play. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think it's very interesting, and I want to see more games like this, but I think that I didn't quite get it in a 3-session arc that we did, and I'd like to play with it more. And that is that your traits are rated on a 1 to 3 scale, and they are your personality traits. They are not, it doesn't matter how strong you are, it matters how audacious you are. It matters how benevolent you are. And everything is based on your traits. And this actually harkens back to me when I first got into role playing, and I had a bunch of players who wanted to do things like, well, but if my character's friends are in trouble, I want him to be like really badass when he needs to be. But the mechanics weren't there for that. You know, it was like, well, I guess you could like, it was a vampire game that I was playing at the time. You could spend willpower, but it's a limited resource on your character sheet and things like that. But it doesn't really, like, your stats won't change. Like, maybe you just try to roll better? I don't know. But in this, you are based on your personality. So your personality governs how effective you are at doing things. And I think this is really interesting, particularly for a more theatrically minded gaming group.
So I think we just, I forget if we discussed at the end of last episode or if it was off camera, but we said that this is a game that's very well built for people that maybe want to start getting into more heavy RP based games. Is that we're all very experienced and very kind of used to playing our heavy RP and working stats into that, but this kind of is a very good starter jumping off point if you're like, yeah, I like games like, let's say, D&D or Pathfinder, where it's all various stat rolls, but you don't get much customization, versus this is like, okay, I can start to role play and be like, yeah, my character's going to do this end goal, but they're doing ingenuity instead of cunning, which is a similar but different kind of way of doing things. And I think it's a very point to start getting into more heavy role playing and helping you change your mindset of how you treat a role playing game.
Yeah, Cal.
That made me realize something that I wanted to add that I forgot, that I wanted to add that I ADHD forgot. And that is because the storyteller, the DM, the GM, rolling anything, that keeps the narrative, which is, this isn't dunk on other systems day, but D&D combat becomes, all right, let's do combat. And you can talk to each other in between rounds to like some extent, but because Kelly's just like roll, like, you know, roll defense, or well, how would they get out of this? And you try to limit the damage that you take or whatever. You don't move out of that narrative. So I actually found the immersion for staying in character smooth was better, but also there doesn't need to be as many rounds because everything's can be lethal. We just fought like an old falling apart skeleton and it was scary as hell, right? But it's cool and cinematic because what was it? I think somebody used a portfolio that was like tools or equipment and like threw a flask at him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And then I was like, oh, wait, I can do that. I'm going to use a dot and I'll have a lighter on me. Right. And that's, I don't know. That is the, hey, can I do this? Because like, oh, my guy would have this on him. Well, what do you have on your sheet? Oh yeah. Spend a dot of this. And they have like a lighter. That's cool.
It's pretty cool.
That's cool.
It's an interesting toolbox. So what I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to toss on a character sheet for us to look over. Mike, I'm going to use your character sheet. You were playing Faustus from the Quick Start. And
oh boy.
Yeah. So let's boop. Okay. So this is not the actual sheet. This is a sheet that Mike made that fits this overlay, but it does have everything that you need to see. So looking there, your personality traits are basically your attributes. They go on a 1 to 3 scale. And it starts with audacity, benevolence, cunning, decorum, defiance, integrity, loyalty, observation, or sensitivity. So as you can see looking at Faustus's sheet, he's a little audacious, he's very cunning, he is a sneaky dude. So with cunning 3, basically he is Ferris Bueller, he could be a master spy or spy master. He's also pretty loyal, and according to the book, loyalty 2 is about on par with, if you don't do it, somebody less capable might do it. So that's kind of like your guiding force, you know? You're there to keep things running. And then he's a bit obsessed. He's undeterred by frivolities that will divide his attention. He's very focused. So that kind of comprises who you are as a person. Now, because of the kickstart or the quick start, he is kind of spread out, and but you can definitely kind of focus a bit more than this when you actually build a character. We were using pre-gens, so this is kind of what we were working with. Now, next, skills. So every role-playing game generally has skills, things that your character has learned or developed over time. So in this, we've got craft, which is building, doing anything with your hands, kind of creation. Okay. Then we have express, using your words, using your ability to kind of express yourself. Words and music would fall under that as well. We've got fight, which is your fight. That could also be your internal fight if you want to, say, use it to argue with someone, you know, particularly aggressively. Then foster. Foster is anything nurturing based. Then we've got intrigue, which is your sneakiness, your subterfuge, your stealth, and things like that. Intuit is kind of your gut reactions. Observe is your perception-based things. Physicality is athletics, acrobatics, anything where you're using your body in a probably non-violent way. And then transgress, which is doing bad stuff, doing stuff that violates the social order. So what you would do is you would assemble a dice pool, and these are both on a 1 to 3 scale. And what you would do is say you were trying to get some information by seducing a maid, because this is the kind of the Gilded Age. So looking at Faustus's sheet, Faustus, how would he go about seducing a maid, for example? Well, we could look at this a number of ways. What would you guys think? Like cunning? Loyalty, maybe he's doing this for his boss. So taking a look at this, you would assemble a dice pool, so multiple d6s, and you could do things like perhaps you're trying to seduce this person in order to get information for your boss, or maybe you're trying to get blackmail material on your boss, because this is, say, your boss's personal maid. So maybe you would assemble a pool made of loyalty and transgress, because you're violating social norms to do this. That means you would have 4 dice. You would roll those against a difficulty. You're going for 6s, basically. If you roll more 1s, then you roll 6s. It is a catastrophe. You have botched in other systems. If you get 3 brills, or 3 6s, as they're called in the game, you get a triumph. Something goes exceptionally well. If you want to improve your odds, you also have a limited pool of something called passion. You can draw on your passion to take that dice pool and give it 2 more dice. So if you're at 0 or 1 dice, it can be a great benefit to you. You also make it so that 5s and 6s count as brills, hits, successes, whatever you call them, on your dice. However, when you use your passions too much, you will fill up your passion pool, and then you will make bad mistakes. Generally, it will lead to your downfall, most likely. Triumph removes a tick off of that passion tracker and makes things easier for you. I don't want to get too much into the weeds with this, but just to give you a sense of what's on the sheet. Beyond that, you can see at the bottom that there is vitality and distress. Vitality is your physical health. Distress is your mental and social health. It is absolutely possible to KO someone in this game mentally and socially with a particularly well-timed barb, or by spilling a drink on them in public. And finally, looking at Faustus, we have your portfolio. Your portfolio is your background resources that you can draw from. In other systems, this would be, say, backgrounds or merits. In the World or Chronicles of Darkness, it would be various class features in other games. So in this, you have access to these, you can spend them. For example, access. You are on lists. You can get into clubs. By spending a point of access, you can bypass that. Entourage, you got people. Information, you know stuff or can get stuff. Mentor, you have somebody that knows things that guides you. You have an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Reputation, people know you. Title, people know your title, and your title has perks. This could be that you are a doctor. This could be that you are famous. This could be that you are part of a hereditary title. Tools or equipment. You have a machine gun in your trunk. Wardrobe, you have an outfit that will get you through here. Think James Bond. It could be a tuxedo, it could be a wetsuit, it could be a bunny costume. Whatever you need to get into this event, you have it. You do not have to define it until you spend it, and I love that. And finally, wealth, money talks. Besides that, you'll notice that Mike's character Faustus had a special skill called Drive. The true folk have a special ability, whereas the aristocracy gain extra points of portfolio. The true folk all have one subcategory of a skill that they always succeed on. In this case, Faustus is a driver, so it would have been his ability to drive a car. Robin, you were playing a character that had repair as it, because you could fix anything. And then if you're playing one of the unbonded, you would have a special there as well, where you gain an additional 2 points of health and distress. Does anybody have anything to add to the character sheet?
Aristocrats got more points in portfolio than anything else.
Yeah, they're loaded. They inherited a lot.
I kind of got to be lucky in the fact that I got to kind of peruse everyone's character sheet when I was making them. And surprisingly for Robin's character, all the skills and stuff, it was a point short. And I was trying to figure why that character was short one when they have a very clear balance between everyone. And then I realized that, well, LJ had Jerry, which as a special skill means you could always use a wrench to try to get yourself out of whatever situation, and it wouldn't be able to fail. And I'm like, that is an opportunity to be very creative.
It's true. So let's take a look again real quick. This is Faustus. So that is Faustus's stats right there. Now let's quickly compare Moira, an aristocrat that Jen played. So going back and forth real quick, you can see, keep your eyes on the portfolio and you'll see a major difference there. The points pretty much double. So looking at this, you can see that they have the same amount of vitality and distress, no special skill for Moira, but Moira is chock full of decorum, has the same amount of loyalty and obsession, but is a little more sensitive, not nearly as cunning, and most of her skills are in either gardening and things, in healing, like in fostering. Maybe she has taken some medical classes or something. She's very intuitive and she's good at expressing herself. Again, looking at Faustus also has quite a few more skills because Faustus works for a living, where Moira does not. Moira instead has many dots of portfolio. Faustus has very few, but Moira has a ton of wealth. 3 points of wealth is enough that you can just spend points of wealth to solve problems. In our quick start,
I was
you
just
absolutely...
like, Robin, take my wealth. Like, do it.
Yep.
Shut up and take my money.
So, and the way it works, when you spend portfolio, sometimes the GM will require you spend multiple points. If you were, say, like buying a company, it may take 2 points of wealth rather than just one. One might be, my car exploded, I will get a new one. And it may take a little bit of time. It may take like an in-game day for you to get that new car, but it's covered. It's a problem you don't have to worry about because you have money. When you spend portfolio, it comes back to you on a rate, usually, unless the GM says otherwise, of course, of 2 points return to your portfolio as a whole per game session. So if you spend 2 points of wealth, 2 points of wardrobe, and 1 point of title, you have to choose which 2 points of those return at the beginning of your next game. It's pretty nice. It means that you've got a steady flow of money, you can buy more clothes, you can do things off screen, and it gives you a lot of flexibility to play with. I like it. Was there anything about it that you found particularly interesting about character sheets or the way that the sheets functioned before we get into the mechanics?
I have to admit, after I kind of thought about it, the entire using points in wealth seemed odd to me because if you look at it on the surface, it's like money, but it's not really money in the fact that this world is falling apart. So money's only going to get you so far. So utilizing your wealth might be something like, oh, look, I'm a billionaire. I can just walk in wherever I want. And if people are like, I'm sorry, you can't be in here, you can probably just flash your, have you seen, like, do you know who I am? Which might not actually be throwing money at them. It might be throwing your reputation as being rich at them. So
or your title.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Wealth. I worked at a very fancy hotel, and wouldn't you know it, the richer you are, the bigger in real life. And when you know it, the more wealthy you are, or the bigger of a company you are, or the where you were in the company, you got a bigger discount.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the wealthier you are, the less money you need to spend because people want to give you a discount. So as to what Michael was just saying there, the more money you have, the less you need to spend because people want.
They want.
Unfortunately, humans respect wealth. Yeah.
All right. So moving on past that, though, we all understand the inherent nature of greed, because we're all poor gamers. But so jumping into that, those are some difference in the character sheets. Now, we've already touched very briefly on the way that the mechanics work. You assign 2 stats. There are also times where your personality traits can be combined with things like if you need to use your wealth to negotiate, you could combine your audacity and your wealth to purchase social media companies. You could do things like that, right? And that is the way the system works. As we said before, if you are against somebody, you will normally be trying to, if you're against a GM-controlled person, you'll be trying to meet their successes or meet their ratings in order to overcome them or to deal any type of damage or distress to them. In player-player combat or contests, you would basically be rolling against each other to see who gets the most 6s. And that is basically the core of the game. There are things that can give you bonuses. For example, if you are in a fist fight with someone and you are somebody picks up a board with a nail in it, you might get a bonus on that, an extra dice. So with that, how did you guys feel the system worked for you as players? Because as a game master, at times I feel like I needed a couple more attempts to really hammer it down because it was a little more passively directed. Right? It's more in your hands than it is mine. So I think I would benefit from hearing what you thought of it.
Get in the passenger seat, DM.
So have any of you played, or anyone listening to this, played, well, I already forgot it, Fiasco?
I have not, but I have a copy of it.
Oh,
I've seen someone play it.
I particularly like it, but it's really, I've played a couple awkward games of that because everyone is the storyteller in that. And there are definitely players who want to show up, don't want to narrate, don't want to active storytell. They want to roll a dice, look at the storyteller and be like, how cool am I? And I've met a couple of these players. They just want to show up, have a min-maxed character sheet usually, roll a dice and then be like, tell me how cool I am. And they're kind of like a consumer of the DM. This is not the game for that type. But for those who want to sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, this isn't a game for wallflowers.
No, and your character can be a wallflower and have things going out on the side, but it gets the most mileage if all the players are like, hey, can I do this? Or, oh, while they're doing that, can I sneak off and do this? And it's definitely a better system if you find yourself wanting to contribute to the storyteller. And I have players like this too, who kind of keep, ooh, what if like this happens and this happens? And you're like, chill, I'm the DM. This is the system for that. Cause you're like, oh, what if that happens? Yeah. Tell me what you do.
Yeah, I kind of like it as a bit of that. There's a bit more agency in the players where they can take control of the narrative more. And I think it is a switch for more traditionally like tabletop GMs and DMs where they are in control of the narrative a lot more than this. And so I think it's a really cool opportunity to have player agency be a little more prominent because they have to. It is a game that is more on the side, like Powered by the Apocalypse, where it is very player driven, and then the GM is doing a little bit more of like set dressing and NPC interactions.
It lends itself more to sandboxing, do you think?
A little. I mean, we had a fairly...
It's proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except on my side was very reactive because...
Well, yes, it is swapped the roles where GMing is very proactive and player is reactive. It's now the opposite. So I think it's a very unique kind of opportunity to switch things up maybe a bit at the table than what people are used to. I think it's something that I liked it. I enjoyed it. I think it was fun.
Would you recommend this for newer game masters? Because I feel almost that my experience running games for the past couple decades was more of a little bit of a hindrance, because I have what I'm used to doing. Right?
Yeah,
I've got fair. I think it would work. I'd say it's kind of a little bit of both. Like for newer people running games, you're gonna have your pros and your cons regardless. And I mean, that's probably why it's so important to have a session 0 and set those expectations, because I've been in a game, I've like a long running game where it has been like pulling teeth to get players to do things, no matter how much you want them to. And so if you're in a system where that's all they do and nobody's doing anything, it's just going to fall apart.
It really depends on your personality type, I think, of what kind of style of game is going to work best for you. I think.
Yes.
Versus 100%. Experience, I think it depends if you are more of like the type A person where you like things being in your control. I think then this may not be the system for you as a ST, GM, DM. But if you like having that more like I'm going to improv and react to what my players are giving me, then this game will be perfect. So I think it's rather than experience versus personality type, I think kind of.
So
go ahead.
We were talking a bit off camera as well, and something that we wanted to touch on during this review. During play, there were a couple of issues that came up just looking at the way that the game is designed, and particularly the starter adventure, because the starter adventure, it's a starter adventure. They're never perfect. And especially like we're working with a copy that's still being written partially. So looking at that, a lot of games and running a session 0, a game before the game so that you all set expectations. Not everybody does that at their table. Some people don't like them. I think that they are very helpful. And I think in a game like this, where the game is social contracts inside of social contracts, having that laid out at the beginning is very critical, because there are a lot of issues. Now, what were some of the issues that you were talking about that you found during play, or that you could foresee being a problem in other people's games? Because I believe particularly Robin and Michael were both playing people from an underclass who were working for particularly Jen, but also for Kal's characters.
I think, one of the I wouldn't say it was an issue per se, but minor gripe, very minor, but it's the ending of the starter adventure, where it was a very aristocratic forward adventure, and the resolution at the end for a true folk, I didn't felt like my character personally had much stakes in the ending. My win was getting the cistern fixed, which was great. And I think that for timing, I had my ending before the episode actually ended, and I got my resolution, and my moment of resolution and fixing it was the good job. I think I got that a little bit earlier in the game, but the final focus on the party was definitely, I found hard to necessarily be a part of that.
How much do you care about the royal family?
For me, as a character who is the working class, I found the special skill thing kind of it's like when your only tool is a hammer, all your problems start to look like nails. And
you're talking about the skill you cannot fail, right?
Yeah, it's like
you can't fail when you drive.
My character had drive, so it's like, congratulations, that's your lot in life now. You get to cart everybody around. You are not a driver. You like, that's it. That's what
you're a car.
Yeah, you are the car now, because if anyone wants to get anywhere, you're it, because otherwise we don't have the skill in that. We don't want to roll for that because you can do it automatically. And same thing with like, we've come to a mansion and we have plumbing problems. You can hear everyone's neck craning as everyone looks at LJ and goes, well, this is why you exist. Get to work.
I feel
it puts us in a strange place where it's like,
particularly the true folk. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would have been great if you could have gotten a bonus, or automatically you get necessarily like maybe like with the passions thing when 5s become brills. I think maybe that would have been a good
I strongly think that it should have been what you just said.
Yeah, because
treat that skill as if they're always using a passion.
Yeah.
Right. And then passions could be
I think
super
that would have
passions
been
on that.
very exactly. And
More
like,
passion.
because the aristocrats have more points to spend, which feels very aristocratic, where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to throw my resources because I have so many of them, but you still get that kind of opportunity to say how you're doing it and choosing specific dots in those in that portfolio to use. You still get a bit more of that character flair versus just I'm driving.
And I can see that the True Folk signature skill, and it may be somewhere else in the book that I haven't seen yet, but I could see where it could be really abused. Like, for example, Mike, you had drive as your ability. What would stop you from just running people down? Or like,
I succeed.
Or like, we can't get into this building. I'll drive through the front door.
I'm sorry.
One distress away.
Decorum. I know who not to drive over.
His special skill isn't murder, Kelly.
Hey,
but here
he
is
said
the thing.
Which people not to murder?
Here's the thing. The True Folk have a sub skill of any skill. So you could, if your game master allowed, take murder as your sub skill of transgress. And then you would always, or fight. You could be John Wick in this, but it would be infallible. You would never have a chance to fail. Or for example, exactly, right? Unless the GM took and this is a problem in role-playing games where the GM takes away something that is on your character sheet and says, well, you can't do that, even though it's the core of your sheet, which is a problem. And I think this is the one place where the game has a little bit of a hang-up. The other
Always succeeding at something isn't as fun as the small chance of failure, but also greatly succeeding. Because you can't lower your passion if you can't get a what was it called?
Triumph.
A triumph.
So wouldn't it makes more sense that you're more likely to triumph during it than
exactly. Yeah. Hell, you could make it so like you could either say that you always spend a passion, or you could say that when you roll your signature skill, any successes are
auto passion.
Yeah. Or you count your brills as double, right? So you're twice as good as the average person. So LJ, Robin's character, can repair a cistern in twice the ease of anybody else. And that is why she's a specialist. It's not that, she'll do it, right? And this was a problem that we saw in the game, that it kind of reduced you to those roles only, which kind of, not to get too deep, but from like a metatextual standpoint, kind of is funny because it's then saying that your laborers are only your jobs. And
that's what it felt like. I was going to ask Robin and Michael, if I'm going to talk about me in a second, because there's a real quick, but did you kind of feel like, okay, so I'm the taxi driver and I'm like the in-house like plumber and nothing else?
Yeah, and I felt like I had a little bit of work to do to make my character a person.
I really liked your characters. I thought both of you were.
I went to the speakeasy and tried to seduce an aristocrat because it's like I'm gonna do something and use like other skills part of my character sheet to try and not just be the plumber, because I felt it did kind of reduce a little bit just the job.
I feel like your two characters were kind of like the Alfred to like Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
and thus more interesting.
It also felt like there was a bit of an obligation to get outside of the, hey, I'm just the driver. Like, I have to have a character.
An obligation.
Like, I have something to bring to the table besides drive me here, drive me there. And looking at my character sheet, I had points in cunning and observation. So I'm like, well, is he a driver? Because he's always kind of looking in the rearview mirror at the conversation going on in the back seat and absorbing all of that information. Like that's a personal player kind of choice.
Yeah, it's a pre-gen, not all pre-gens are going to be perfect. But I didn't really like my character. Maybe it was the aristocrat vibe. Maybe it was
everybody wanted to play LJ.
I wanted to play the unbonded, but I thought this game needed an aristocrat to work. So
you made the game work. You made the starter story work by playing the aristocrat.
You were kind of like the protagonist, it felt like.
Yeah, and I didn't want to do that, but I did it for the game. But it's why I started playing into my loyalty dots and being like, this is my household. Do not
my
fuck
family.
with my household.
Yeah. I liked that. I thought we made it work. All right. So and speaking of the roles, really quick, I don't want to spend like too long on it. The only time in, oh God, how old am I? 20 years I've been running games. 22 years I've been running games, mostly running, but playing a little bit. I had Bleed. Never would have thought this. And that was from...
Bleed is when your in-character emotions and experiences come out, or vice versa. So if you're angry in character, you get angry out of character, or something like that. Just in case you don't know the term.
Yeah, thank you. And for me, it was like, why am I feeling, talking to my partner, I'm feeling like gross, like I did something wrong a lot. And it was because I was not that Willard played like this, but it was like, you there, garçon, fetch me my morning tea.
Yes, sir.
And this time make it right. And you can play the character, but you're playing with people. And I guess I don't like being an aristocrat. I wasn't even the boss of any of the other PCs.
I tried to act like that only with the NPCs and not with.
Yeah.
Well, it's because I can take it. We know this from our experience role playing with each other.
Well, it's also a difference when you're like doing the NPC, because it's not necessarily as personal as like a PC. When you, as a storyteller, you play many NPCs versus if you're doing it to a PC, they are playing one person, so it's hard not to feel personal.
If I don't like the way that I am treated as an NPC, that NPC can just not come back into play. But if you have a bad relationship between a character and a character, you're stuck as those characters, and that is much more personal. So, and that's why we were saying a session 0 is really important, because if you're having a mixed game with aristocrats and true folk, or aristocrats and unbonded, particularly, you've got antagonism already built in there, and you want to make sure that everybody has their boundaries set up, because you can be really, really shitty to each other in game. And I think groups that doesn't matter, but for some groups it really will.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that was the kind of running a starter story, is that it was really set up to be a aristocratic based pre-gen versus in their book they actually say like, make sure you have people from different classes and you are a outside group of misfits that are figuring out this way in the story. So they actually really do launch this idea of having that different class built in, but the fact that you guys are a group together in this universe, but it's not that kind of interaction within the party. But I think with the starter story, it ended up being a little bit more of that clear, definite lines between the classes.
Always think Life Raft from the Titanic.
Life Raft from the Titanic. And if you pick up Our Brilliant Ruin and you end up running that, join our Discord. The link's down below. Feel free to ask us for ways to adjust the starter story if you're going to run it. We'd be happy to. Just at me. I'm Dorktales in the Dorktales Discord. But besides that, it's a really interesting game that has a lot of potential. And I think that it is a very interesting game in the way that we are seeing games develop in the current tabletop landscape. We're seeing a lot more third-party games. We're seeing a lot more games coming from studios like Free League, Modifius, and now Studio Hermitage, and things from like the Powered by the Apocalypse engine. There's so much more coming out and moving away from that standard model of like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. And I think that it's very cool that we are seeing games evolve this way. And with that, Our Brilliant Ruin, with its personality-based system, evolves the game in a way that I personally, this game may be drawing from examples that I have just not been privy to, but I haven't seen a game kind of take this angle before. And I find that really exciting, that we are moving this direction as an industry and as a medium for telling stories. So I strongly would recommend check out Our Brilliant Ruin. If this has sounded at all interesting, or if you have looked at any of our actual plays, or if you just checked out the Kickstarter, when this review drops, there are still a couple more days on the Kickstarter, and you will be able to probably do a late backer after it's over. They'll probably do that. And if not, go talk to your gaming store and ask them to get a copy in when it releases. I had a lot of fun playing this. I can see that there are some problems that might come up when running it, because it is a different type of system. But overall, I think it's something really cool, and you should check it out. And that is my personal opinion, divided from the fact that they did sponsor us. Check it out. If this is the type of game that you would like, look into it. Let's go around, drop what you thought of it, and let's say goodbye, starting with Mike.
Well, I've been Michael, and in my opinion, I think this is a great game for people to start out. You are going to enjoy it, and it's going to give you a new kind of angle towards role playing, especially if you haven't played before. And even if you have, this will give you a brand new dimension.
Robin.
Yeah, I've been Robin, and I think this is a really unique kind of game that really pushes a narrative story versus stats and roles based, and I really enjoy it. And it's very simple. All you need are Yahtzee dice. You need D6s, so it's not like you have to go to a game store and buy fancy sets of dice. You can use your Yahtzee dice that you have at home, because everyone has a game of Yahtzee somewhere. And I really like it. I think it'd be a very unique game, and I would love to play a group of Unbonded with y'all, because I think that would be a time.
That was actually a question I was going to ask at the end. If you could play another group, would it be everybody wants to play Unbonded? I think you
Unbonded.
The Unbonded are the most fun, and I'm sad that we didn't just... Maybe, Studio Hermitage, you want another actual play from us? Come back, we'll do an Unbonded game, and it'll be basically like Raiders from Fallout. It'll be great. Robin, we good with you? I'll play Unbonded. All right, Kal.
Yeah, my name is Kal. I really like the system, and it looks like it would lend well for people getting into RPGs, and also people have been playing RPGs a long time that want a more narrative focus, less dungeon crawl, more intrigue,
more debutante crawl. Jen.
Yeah, debutante crawl is a great name for this. That would be another great actual play name, actually, is our brilliant reading debutante crawl. Yeah. Maybe if we get enough patrons, I don't know.
Enough patrons will do it. Yeah, I will run it.
Hi, I'm Jen. And yeah, this was a fun game. This was a lot of fun to play. I was really excited that I got the chance to do this. And yeah, everybody has basically said everything else that I love about it. So I'm just going to sign off. You can find me at Paradox and Mage of the Ascension podcast, or right here on Dork Tales.
And I've been Kelly. Like I said before, this game is really interesting, and if this is the type of era and vibe that you want to introduce your table to, or if you just want to romp around a little bit and set fire to Downton Abbey, this is probably a great game for you. Go check them out. And a big thank you to Studio Hermitage for supporting us and for helping keep the lights on here. If you like what we do here on Dork Tales, you can find us on Twitch, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. This will be going up on podcast soon. The entire Our Brilliant Ruin series will be up sometime in April, so you'll be able to listen to it on your mobile or wherever you listen to podcasts. And yeah, if you'd like more stuff from us, come. Join us, and you can join us on our Patreon, where you can see the likes of early games of Alien from Free League. You can see a Hunter the Vigil Chronicles of Darkness game where it is a legal drama, and so much more. Big thank you to everybody who supports us, and we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Our Brilliant Review. Bye, everyone.